the first one, yeah, I had mixed up my schedules with my home life. It was my stepson's 18th birthday, and I thought the dinner plans were for the Saturday, but lo and behold, they were Fridays. So, anyways, it didn't work out, but I'm here now and ready to roll up my sleeves and work with you guys to make some positive changes. So, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Deputy Mayor Anderson, do you want to say a few words, and then we'll go into committee introductions? Nope.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Perfect. Excellent. So before we get into the official agenda items, the top item on the list was just to have a brief introduction of the task force, who we are. This is the first time many of us are working together. So I'll start from the top left on my screen. Ken Topping, can you just give us a brief overview who you are?
Good evening. So I'm Ken Topping. I've been a resident of Shelburne since 1974. I retired as a school principal from this area. And since that, I've done a number of things. Currently, I'm working sometimes with Dufferin County, driving seniors and disabled folks to medical appointments. I've served on a number of committees and whatnot over the years. Of note to Shelburne, I'm currently on the Headwaters Hospital Board, and I've been on the Central West Lynn Health Board. I was president of the Dufferin Arts Council at one time. I'm a Lion, a Mason, and I have served on the Pace Credit Union board as well. So I've been involved in a number of governance issues, governance items over the past few years. And I golf and ride a motorcycle. Excellent. And ride a bicycle.
Wonderful. Thank you for that overview. Gear Harvey?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gear Harvey, resident of the community, parent, social worker at the high school. Yeah, volunteer in the community. That's me.
Excellent. And Cheyenne?
Hi, I'm Cheyenne. I've lived in Shelburne all my life. I grew up here. I'm 23 now. The other week, my friend and I organized the Black Lives Matter demonstration. I'm really happy to be a part of the group. It's something that's really important to me, and I'm happy that something in my community is being done. So yeah, happy to be here.
Excellent, welcome, and a wonderful march it was, so thank you for organizing that.
Thank you.
Soha?
Hi, I'm Soha. I'm in grade 9. I go to Center Dufferin. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. This is also my first meeting. I missed the last one, but I'm so happy to be here with you guys, and I can't wait to see what we're going to do.
Wonderful. Simran?
Hi, although not a resident for Sheldon, but I am a property owner there. So everything that happens in the community, and eventually we might plan to move there or live there at some point in our life. So we want to make sure that it is an amazing community where we would not have to think twice if we have to move there any day. And even if we don't live there, it is sort of a responsibility in itself to ensure that everyone is being treated equally there. And this is the least I think I can do as a community volunteer here in Orangeville. We've lived here in Orangeville for almost 5 years now, and we are so close together in terms of proximity that whatever happens in Orangeville, that impacts Shelburne as well as the whole of Dufferin County. So just trying to do my bit.
Excellent, thank you. And Chief Moore?
Yes, thank you. So Kent Moore, I'm currently the Chief of Police for the Shelburne Police Service. I've been with the Shelburne Police Service since 1987. In the last 16 years as the Chief of Police.
Perfect, welcome. And Elfia Casamento?
Hi everyone, I'm Elfia Casamento. I am the Director of Police's Youth Shelter, a youth shelter that services all of Dufferin County. I sit on a number of boards as well. I sit on the police board, I sit on a situation table, Vitra, Lynn, majority of them. I also am the host of the Multicultural Day as well, and I've been a resident of Shelburne since 2013.
Excellent, thank you, welcome aboard. And I think we've gone through the entire list. My name is Elfia O'Hara Stevenson, and I've been fortunate to work with a few of you in the community, most notably the Youth Advisory Committee at St. Dufferin High School, so working along with SOHA. And of course, I've had a number of opportunities to make presentations to council, so I'm very familiar with Deputy Mayor Anderson and Mayor Wade-Mills through that forum, and town hall discussions with Chief Moore as well at the table. So I'm very honored to be the chair of this task force, and I'm looking forward to all of the great things that I know that we will accomplish together for the greater good of Shelburne and ultimately Dufferin County. So thank you, everyone, and welcome aboard. And without further delay, I think we can move into our agenda items. So in the last, when I sent out the previous meeting invite, I shared with you the agenda. So before we get into the rest of the agenda items, can I have someone to move the agenda, please? So I need someone to move it. Simran?
I'll move it.
Perfect. Do I have a seconder for the agenda?
I can second that.
I'll do that.
Okay, so I'll put Kent down. Perfect. Any discussion items on the agenda? No discussion items. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, and the second item on the agenda list is approval of previous meeting minutes. So again, the previous meeting minutes was shared with you as part of the list of items in the invitation last week. So assuming everyone has had a chance to review the minutes, can I have someone to move the minutes, please? Elfia?
I'll second it.
Excellent, thank you, Ken. Any discussion items? No discussion items, all approve? Excellent, all approve. Okay, third item on the list, just in case I forget to mention, these sessions are being recorded. I'm inserting a new item on the list that we have not yet discussed, and it's to present the opportunity for any public participants to add any comments. So I don't see any public participants on this meeting. So, and we have no other comments received from town staff or any questions that were posed to the task force members. So at this point, without any further objections, we will move forward on this item. For any of the public members who want to visit and participate in these meetings, all of these meetings will be shared on the Town of Shelburne website, and the minutes will also be posted on the Town of Shelburne website, okay? The next item on our agenda for today is review and approve.
Can I ask a question about that item?
Absolutely.
It's great to have public input, but it can get out of control. So what kind of standards or limits do we have on unannounced presentations? And does there have to be any pre-approval or anything like that? Any ideas?
I'll look to Mayor Mills or perhaps Deputy Mayor Anderson to add some comment on that. The idea would be if because these are public meetings, the idea would be to have the public participate and listen. There should be a forum for us to be able to field questions. But given this is the first time that I'm going through this process, I would look for direction from Mayor Mills or Deputy Mayor Anderson for some guidance, please.
Sure. In the council context, there are really sort of, two primary elements of public participation on each agenda. One is it open public question period. And essentially what that does is it allows members of the public to ask a question. So that this isn't presentation time. This isn't, speech making soapbox time. This is if you have a question, you can come and ask the question. You may or may not get a direct answer that night, depending upon the complexity of it. But that is the design of that. The second piece is a public delegation opportunity. those do have to be scheduled and requested in advance. Within the council context, we have a 2-week advance notice requirement. That's something we can work with to fit our needs, but that would be an opportunity for somebody who doesn't necessarily have a question, but would like to come and provide a presentation to council or this group. This is a little bit different than councils, and I think your point is well taken, Ken. And maybe when it comes to question period, rather than just sort of open the floodgates and allow people to show up at the appointed time and ask questions, maybe something the group could consider is to have a deadline in advance of each scheduled meeting where any questions have to be made in writing and submitted to the chair. That would be right. So
Can I just make a request that we all go on mute? I'm getting a lot of listening feedback, and it happens on Zoom if everybody's got their mic open. So if when you're speaking, you go off mute, but the rest of the time works better if you're on mute. Thank you for your answer.
So Deputy Mayor, I don't know if you.
Elfia, I'm sure she'll join us back in a second.
Okay, I think I lost everyone. Okay, are we back?
Public,
If we before the meeting in order to organize it and make sure that we have the proper information ready.
I think Elfia is frozen.
yikes.
I can see her, but she doesn't seem to be moving.
In the interim, as she's looking to get back on, does anybody else have any comments as to what the mayor has suggested? We've heard from the vice chair, Elfia, with respect to how the question should be handled, being that some notice should be provided in advance. Does anybody else have any comments regarding that?
Hi, Deputy Mayor Anderson, it's Elfia. I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we just left off. I don't know if you heard. So we were tabling what the mayor had said by way of either we make a decision or the task force makes a decision that they'd rather have questions in advance. So that's put out there, and there's an understanding that that's the protocol if we are going to be dealing with public questions, or basically the open invitation that somebody could join and ask questions during the question period. There would be a time limit and maybe even a limit on the questions that could be asked, but that's another way of dealing with it. So we just heard before you joined Elfia comment on the fact that she prefers that the questions be submitted in advance, and now I was just asking the rest of the task force. I can see. Could you hear me?
I think I lost you towards the end. You were asking questions of the task force. If this cuts out again, I'm probably going to pass the baton over to Vice Chair Elfia.
Wade, better luck than me. What are you taking from there, Wade?
Elfia, can I suggest that you take the video off? It might help with the audio.
Okay. Okay. I think we're good. So I think the last point that in regards to public participation, we do have the opportunity at a later date for the public to make delegations to the task force. So that may be another option for the public to participate in these meetings going forward.
That's just to comment on that. That's different than what we're talking about. Generally speaking, as the mayor pointed out, during council meetings, there's an opportunity, and it doesn't have to be tied into, for example, the feedback that we're looking to solicit from the public for the task force, for the purpose of the task force. If somebody generally wants to come in and ask a question about process or anything that they've read in the minutes, generally there's an opportunity for them to do that, and not necessarily at a scheduled time when we're particularly looking to get information from the public. So what the mayor is suggesting is, in order to make sure that it's not unruly, there's an opportunity to put out there and for the task force to make a decision that if we're going to be taking questions from the public, that it be submitted in advance in writing, so that way it's streamlined and it is not chaotic. Or we leave it where members of the public are able to sign in. There's a specific time delegated during the course of the meeting, and they're able to ask questions, and that could be timed by way of the length of the questions, and it could also be limited as to how many questions. So those are the two options. And so the task force could make a decision if they feel comfortable today as to which option they pursue. So you heard from Elfia saying she was in favor of the questions being submitted in advance, and then you can take it from there as to what the rest of the group feels.
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question? If we do decide to go that they submit their questions, but we have certain meetings where parts of the community are coming forward to make presentations, can we then change those so that we can then have an open discussion with the community?
So again, what I'm saying is that that's separate.
Just for those specific.
So when we're inviting the public to come in and do a delegation, then they'll have an opportunity along with stakeholders to come in and do a delegation before council. So that information will be provided to the task force in advance. This is different. We're talking about anybody who wants to come in and ask a question, whether it be about process or something that they read in the minutes, they want clarity. That's what we're talking about right here. So that's different from them being invited to come and provide their opinions and their feelings about racism, et cetera, in the community. So two distinct things. And so that's what we're trying to deal with right now. Outside of the invitation, just general questions. Wade, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, I would just add too, I mean, essentially there is a third option, and that is we don't have any sort of public question period outside of, the pre-booked delegation opportunity. And to be honest, a number of municipal councils take that approach because question periods can turn into, ambush sessions, for lack of a better term. We've taken the approach at Shelburne Council that we'll take the risk if somebody wants to come in and try to ambush us. That's fine. That's their prerogative. But this task force can choose not to have any sort of public question period built into the regular agenda, and to Elfia's point, just at certain times have more public type meetings where the public is invited to engage and offer whatever commentary, questions, thoughts they may have. So I mean, it's entirely up to the group. I'm fine with any of the three options personally, but it's whatever the group is satisfied with.
Okay. So we have the three options are no public meetings, questions in advance, and what was the first option that was presented?
It was an option for them to speak at a question and answer period during each meeting.
Perfect.
If I got that correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do a vote on, we'll start with no public meetings. Is anyone in favor of that option? Can I have a move?
Sorry, just when you say no, you're saying no questions during the meetings. That's what you mean, obviously, right?
Like any meetings.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So do I have someone to move that where there's no public participation? Sorry, Bella, can you put yourself on mute?
No, that wasn't. Hallie, that was one of the options. I don't think anyone raised their hand for that unless I didn't see it.
Looks like Chief Moore did.
Oh, okay.
Do I have someone to second? No public. Okay, so we don't have anyone to second that. Okay, so that means that we have an option on the table then to have public participating in these meetings.
Through in every meeting or through pre-submitted questions?
So it looks like we're going through the options. So the first was defeated, which was appears no questions during the public meetings. There's another option on the table, which is what the mayor had put forward, which is to ask questions, but those questions would have to be submitted in advance. And then the third option would be basically how it regularly runs, which is there's a time for question period and people could come in and ask questions during the meeting at that designated time slot. So that would be the third option. So we've dealt with the first one, which is no public meeting, no questions during public meeting. That was defeated in essence. And now we're dealing with option number 2.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say I kind of misunderstood then. I thought we were talking about not having questions at each and every meeting, but setting time aside at specific meetings. So I misunderstood that first option. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's cutting in and out for a lot of us.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I think I'm still good.
Okay, so do we need to present the options again so that now that everybody's on the same page? Elfia, why don't you just present the 3 options in order and see if you can get a mover and seconder. If not, then obviously we're not going to go forward with that option and we just move to the next option, okay?
Okay, so option one is to have a question period. Option 2 is to submit questions in advance. Option 3 is no public participation in the task force meetings. So perhaps we'll go in reverse order then. Option 1, do we have someone who would want to approve the question period motion?
I'll put that forward.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
So that was approved by Ken and seconded by Soha. Any discussions, objections?
I'm sorry, I was cutting off. So what exactly is it? I'm sorry.
So this is the question period option. So where the public can have a chance to present their questions and have it answered by the task force.
So we are voting in favor of option 1, which is?
Having a question period option. So the public can submit questions and have them answered by us.
Okay, thank you.
I move that. I just want to say I'm comfortable with that. What I was trying to prevent is people coming on with a big delegation that would take a lot of meeting time. To answer some questions, we can control that, but delegations can get out of hand.
I agree. So no objections. Do I have all in favor then? We'll proceed with this option.
Correct.
And since I'm not able to see video, can I have a thumbs up or a comment from those who are in favor? So I have Ken, I have Elfia, I have Kent as well. Simran. So that's 1, 2, 3.
Just to be clear, my thought was, and I'm not sure if this was discussed at the first meeting, the deputy mayor and I are sort of sitting as ex officio members. We're not voting, right?
Correct. Correct.
Good.
Sorry, I didn't see a vote from Gear or actually we have Simran, so we do have quorum. So I think we can proceed. So we have Ken, Elfia, Kent, and Simran, you approved as well, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about the question period right now, right?
Correct.
Yes, I'm also in favor of that.
Okay, perfect. So I'm also in favor. So this has been approved, and I think we can move forward. We have quorum. So Gary, if you can record that we have Simran, Soha, Elfia, Kent, Elfia, and Ken approving this motion to have a question period. Okay, excellent. So this was at 6:30 p.m. Okay, the next hot item on the agenda is a review and approval of the task force terms of reference and mandate. We had a healthy discussion at the last meeting on some of the key terms, and the takeaway for the task force was to review what was outlined and provide any commentary, any feedback. I have received feedback from one individual. Beyond that, I have not received any additional commentary. So at this point, do I have someone to approve or move the mandate terms of reference as outlined in the meeting agenda?
So accepting the statement as is, because what was being contested is what the word racialized over marginalized over racialized. That was the contested item.
Correct.
Is that what we're talking about?
So yeah,
So
let me retract. So we can approve the statement with the word marginalized versus racialized.
I just have a question. This statement that we're talking about, what exactly is it for? Like what would be the title of the statement, or what is it referring to?
So the statement is, in a sense, how this task force will be operating. So the terms of reference and or mandate.
Okay. I also wanted to say, and I think I emailed you about it too, is I think it's good for us to have, maybe even if it's just a sentence or two, just like a little like a vision mission kind of thing, just like this is like the task force will, because it kind of just like refers mostly to the government, but something that could say like the task force like is doing this, and then kind of maybe say a little something about how we're going to do that.
So in the mandate as outlined right now, essentially, I believe it talks to what we are going to do. So the end goal of the task force is to come up with a blueprint to present to Shelburne Town Council. Does that answer your question, Soha?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So without any further comments, can we go back to the original motion to approve the terms of reference with the word marginalized? Do we have anyone to approve that?
I think, sorry, Alethea, I guess what Gear is saying is should there, now that there's a full complement here, there was an issue raised as to whether the word racialized or marginalized should be used. And so now that and it was put over until today to make a decision either to accept it as is or to continue or to use the word racialized instead of marginalized. So and Wade, you could sort of comment or jump in if you wish, but so I would think that that would need to be cleared up from the task force today as to whether they feel comfortable moving ahead as is, as you pointed with marginalized, or as was raised by Gear at the last meeting, the suggestion to go with racialized. And so maybe getting a decision on that first, and then once that decision is made based on those two words, then it can be put out as to whether the document is to be accepted in whole.
I would like to use marginalized.
Yeah, I think that's a good one because it also says the government should also ensure that everyone, regardless of race, religion, or financial means. So marginalized kind of like sums all of that up, while racialized is more of like just for race.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. Do I have any? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Alethea. I'll just offer this thought. Because the task force is called the Anti-Black Racism and Discrimination Task Force, and maybe this is the lawyer talking in me, and it's overcomplicate things, but could we not mention racialized and or marginalized, and then it captures both? Because I think really at the heart of this task force are racial discrimination issues that we're looking at, but also more broadly just discrimination in general. And I mean it's up to the group clearly, but I do kind of like racialized being in there because I think it's just clear as to what the point is. And I don't think it necessarily has to be an either or. I think it can be both.
I agree with what Wade said. I think including both is good because I feel like marginalized kind of takes away from the racialized aspect.
Yeah.
Can I speak to it? Since some folks were in here last time, in terms of the point that I raised, the importance of using the word racialized speaks to this task force focusing on concerns for race. I had a question actually since the last conversation, and I want to ask who folks are feeling were not being included in this particular phrasing of the mandate. So if I can understand who people are feeling were not going to be included in the phrasing of the mandate, if people can speak to that, so I can maybe get a better understanding or clarity.
Are you referring to if we use the word racialized instead of marginalized, what groups would be excluded? Is that what you're asking?
Correct.
Okay, so I can speak in terms of when I was thinking of marginalized, I was thinking marginalized meaning everyone is included, whether you're from the LGBTQ plus community or you're from Muslim community, which is not necessarily race but religion. All of those communities where we know that there is discrimination, by using a term as in racialized, you're essentially letting those people know if they're reading it, they're not going to be included in this. If you use marginalized, it's read and by everyone saying, okay, yes, I can come to the table and they're going to respect what I need to say. I am invited to the table. That was just my thought process on it.
Anyone else?
I like it as it sits. Thank you.
Could you advise who you feel is not being included?
Me? My interest was that I think in the past few weeks, we've had as many difficulties, for instance, with Indigenous folks and some of the things that happened to them. So I wouldn't want to see in any way that Indigenous people's voice could not be heard by this committee. I think if we take marginalized out and leave it as only racialized, I think that would eliminate that in name, perhaps.
Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll just comment here. I think what the mayor has suggested is a reasonable balance between sort of the both ends of the spectrum, if I may put it that way. I guess to answer your question directly, could it be perceived if you just use racialized? Could somebody interpret that it may not necessarily include them? Yes, it's possible that somebody may interpret that, but to avoid that, I guess I like the proposal made by the mayor in the sense that it doesn't have to be necessarily one over the other. We could probably include both, and to ensure that the purpose of what we're setting out to do as a priority is addressed, but as the mayor pointed out, we are also addressing discrimination and racism in general that are faced by other marginalized groups. So having both, I think, is probably the proper balance in my view.
Okay. Thank you for that, guys. Anyone else, it feels that any particular group is being excluded? Because I just want to make sure. Okay. So there are Black LGBTQs, which falls under racialized. There are Black Muslims, which falls under racialized. There are indigenous people also fall under the term of racialized. So racialized essentially covers it. If you are, at one point I heard, actually maybe I did that, but every group that was raised here falls on the category of racialized. And as was suggested by folks who brought this initiative forward, was essentially acknowledgement of racism. And so, as I said before, bold exclamations were made, or proclamations were made, and so let's continue to be bold and call it for what it is.
And also I wanted to say, like, even if we were to just use racialized, I mean, everybody, like every single human falls under a race, right? Whether you're white, whether you're Black, whether you're Arab, like whatever you are, you fall under a specific race. So even if we were not to go with marginalized, because like, even like in our name, like it just says race, like anti-racism, right? So even if we were just to do that, to really like focus and like solidify that we're focused on like anti-racism, I think that would be fine too.
So my only comment to all of this is, if we focus on the word racialized, I still think that we would be excluding some individuals that don't fall under a specific racialized category. So you mentioned, Gare, that there are individuals from the Black community who also identified as LGBTQT+. What about those individuals that are LGBTQT+, but not Black or from another race, right? How do we capture now those who fall under the two-spirited umbrella? So where I'm going with this is, I think for the most part, and I don't want to be offensive when I make this statement, but for the most part, I don't have that equity lens that I can, decipher what's the difference between marginalized and racialized. So I'm not sure the general public would have that same appreciation for the difference. So I would be proposing that we merge the two, use the two words of marginalized and or racialized to satisfy our agenda, as well as what the public would also understand.
Agreed.
I hear that. I hear that. And I, not being disrespectful, we're very fortunate to have Google. And if the public, and so this is a point of education, because one of the steps in regards to addressing racism and anti-Black racism is to provide some education to the public and the community. So when folks, the community, public, are feeling, having a concern about not being represented or anything of the sort, it's incumbent upon them to educate themselves on the issues. I took that rally that we all did the other day as permission from the community that we recognize that Black and discrimination and racism is not okay. So again, for the committee that's responsible for anti-racism, anti-Black racism to be, what's the word? Backpedaling, there's probably a better word. I think it says something. So we're going to be bold. Let's be bold.
Okay, so this is just going to be my final remark, and I think at this point, Elfia, we're going to put the items on the table and allow the task force to make a decision on what to use. I just wanted to address the bold factor. So by no stretch of the imagination is this task force going to be backpedaling, and by no stretch of the imagination is the task force not going to be bold. When we look at the name of the task force, it's very clear that we are addressing anti-Black racism. When we look at the mandate, it is very clear as to why the task force was formed to begin with. And so calling it what it is exactly what we did when we named the task force. And I think what the mayor has suggested, and ultimately the group will decide, but what the mayor is suggesting is there's an acknowledgement that race needs to be there so that it tackles the very specificity of what we were trying to capture, and having marginalized as well allows other people to feel that we're not ignoring them at the perceived benefit of others. And so I like the balance, but I just want to assure everybody that we were bold at the very beginning. We're not going to take a step backwards, and we're going to make sure we're going to address what the community expects us to address. by the end of this task force. So those are my thoughts on that. But Elfia, I think at some point, once the discussions are finished, that we move forward with this issue.
I'd just like to add one more comment, and I agree wholeheartedly with the deputy mayor's sentiments there. And I don't think being more inclusive rather than less inclusive is any commentary with respect to the boldness of the task force going forward. When you look at the name of the task force and some considerable thought went into that, there are three components: it's anti-Black racism, anti-racism, and discrimination. And that third one, I think, is sort of the general discrimination that raised some in the group to say marginalized is a better word. Now, I understand where Deer's coming from. We don't want to lose that racism element, because that really is a major driving force. So that, again, that's why I suggested you two. I don't think it has to be mutually exclusive. I think it can be both. I think the mandate of this committee or this task force can be large and bold at the same time.
Can I please ask that you guys mute if you're not speaking? It is really, really difficult to hear with all the feedback.
Thank you. So, Gear, do you have any final comments before we put the vote?
I am in favor of both.
Okay.
I have a quick question, just to clarify something in my own head. So when we talk about the mandate, the specific usage of words like marginalized or between racialized and marginalized, and when we are talking about including our LGBTQ friends who might be feeling discriminated against or whatever. So I need to understand, we as a task force, would we be working on doing some sort of a research or giving suggestions to the town about those people as well? Or it would just be focusing on anti-Black racism and discrimination?
Elfia, if you don't mind, I could certainly address that.
Sure.
Hello? Can everybody hear me? Just give a thumbs up.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Everybody here? Okay, perfect. So Shiburin, it's not just to hear from those who may be facing or Blacks that are facing racism and then making recommendations on that. And I know Elfia will speak to this in a moment. I believe she touched on this the last meeting. But we're going to be hearing part of the feedback from the community is to hear not only from members of the public via a survey, but as you know, there's going to be a delegation via Zoom from many of our community stakeholders, some of which are, for example, DCAF will be coming in and doing a presentation. We have Debbie from Dufferin Circle, who represents the Indigenous community. There's going to be somebody from the LGBTQ community that will be coming in and speaking as well. The objective is to hear from these folks from these communities because, again, even though we are addressing anti-Black racism and racism, there's also this component as well. So those groups will be coming in and doing presentations. Once we've gathered all the information, being the task force, the task force will then review that information and then determine, based on what they've heard from these different stakeholders within the community, what their recommendations should be back to council. So whether it's recommendations addressing anti-Black racism, whether it's recommendations on how to address Indigenous concerns and LGBTQ, if that is what is heard during this process, then you will have the opportunity to consider that and then make recommendations back to council to address the issues that have been brought forward.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or discussion? Nope. Okay, so I think we can put a vote then to go forward and use the words marginalized and or racialized in or terms of reference and mandate. So we had Elfia who moved that. Do we have someone to second it?
I will second that.
Simran second. And no further discussion items? Okay, all in favor of using marginalized and or racialized? So Elfia, Simran, Elfia,
I like to abstain, not abstain, I like to see I'm actually not in favor of that.
Okay, that's Bella.
Yes, it's me, Bella.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to abstain from voting or not in favor?
I'm not in favor.
So we have Elfia, Simran. Ken, do I have your vote? Are you?
Yes, I'm in favor, sorry.
Okay, and Kent?
That was me, sorry, I am in favor.
Perfect. Ken Topping?
Ken gave a thumbs up. I don't think you can see it, right?
He's a yes.
Perfect, thank you. I can't see that. Perfect. And Cheyenne?
Yes.
Excellent. So we have 6, including myself, 7, and 2 nays. So I think we have quorum. The mandate will stand with the words marginalized and or racialized. So the time is now 6:51 p.m. Gare, can you record that, please? Thank you. Excellent.
Just before we leave that topic, and I didn't raise it because I didn't want to do any more wordsmithing, but a couple of the comments that have been made in that discussion indicated that, what sounded to me anyway, that we were considering things far beyond the boundaries of Shelburne. When groups come in to talk about these issues that we're concerned about, are we going to entertain presentations, whatever, which could lead us to sort of county situations, not Dufferin situations. Or sorry, Dufferin County situations, not Shelburne. We're due to report back to the town of Shelburne. And I was hearing a little wider presentations than that. For instance,
Can
the
you be
Dufferin.
specific?
Well, when you mention the Dufferin Cultural Circle, not that they don't have a valid representation, but they have a representation to work for the county. So what do they speak to in the town of Shelburne would be one thing I would be asking them. And I'll use a specific example. Because my name's out there as being on this committee now, I had a person approach me the other day about how they had been treated badly at Superburger. They had been treated badly. I feel for that. But I had to say, I don't know where I can take that committee or not. It goes to the side of Shelburne. We may save this for another time, but I see it becoming an issue when we listen to groups or individuals. One of the questions I'll be saying is, well, what does that have to do with Shelburne? Any other reactions to that?
Did the person suggest or identify as a racialized individual?
Yes, they did.
So my thoughts around, sorry, did you want to finish, Gare?
I'm wondering if then that's the type of thing where data would be collected later based with their experience being as one that's included in the information. But are you suggesting because Superburger is outside of Shelburne? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I just want to put that to the group, that how specific do we want to make this? The person's concern was valid. It was a racial issue they're dealing with. I feel for them completely. But I can't see offering suggestions from this committee to the town of Shelburne about what happens in Mulmer Township. I just wonder what the rest of the group feels about that, about how widely we want to define community.
So
sorry. Let me just jump in here and Wade, because when we put together the task force, there were certain things that we had in mind. So to answer your question, Ken, you're right to say, or to be concerned to say that, look, we want to address issues. This task force is for the town of Shelburne. It's not for the county of Dufferin. When these agencies come in, they are representing individuals within their agencies that also reside in Shelburne. And you're right, to your point, they are coming in to say, listen, whether it's Debbie from Dufferin Circle, look, there's a segment of Indigenous people that live in the Shelburne community, and here are their concerns. And so these agencies are coming to speak to issues that impact people that reside in the town of Shelburne. So you're absolutely right. It's very Shelburne specific. The county is working on a Dufferin Inclusion Committee that will address issues within the county itself. But this committee is going to be hearing from individuals and or stakeholders that can provide commentary on how individuals are impacted right here in the town of Shelburne.
Does that answer your question, Ken?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Moving on. The next item on our agenda for tonight is a review of the proposed survey. So I know we are coming towards the end of our night, but what I will do, instead of taking time now to review the survey, I will send you, everyone, a draft copy of the survey for you to review. We have, I'll include also the deadline. We need to have the survey that will be shared with the public. I need your input by the 9th, and then final approval of the survey by the 13th. So my goal is to share the draft version of the survey that Elfia took a stab at creating for us, and I think she did an amazing job, so thank you, Elfia. It's draft version, so the objective is to get everyone's feedback and input. We can take the time to edit as we go along, but the objective is to make sure that I have everyone's input by the 9th and final approval by the 13th. And as we go through the rest of the agenda items, I will share with you the proposed schedule for the rest of the task force and how the survey will come into play, timings for the survey to go out, etc. Okay?
So I also just wanted to add there, Ken, I believe I did put a question in there in regards to businesses and how people were being treated in regards to going to business specific to Shelburne. I have a little bit more to add to it. That was a very, very rough draft, just with just a few questions, but I mean, everyone is welcome to add what they need to add to it as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Elfia. The next item on the list is requires approval again, and part of the task force is to request the support from the town of Shelburne to essentially put marketing material on the town's website. The idea would be to have marketing material to explain to the public what the objective of the task force is and what we're trying to achieve in terms of getting the surveys completed and the date for the survey. So my ask of this task force is to provide a motion or approval to submit a request to the town of Shelburne to have marketing material shared on the town website. Do I have someone who would move that?
I'll move it. I also wanted to just add.
Sorry, could you just remove the shared screen? I don't know if I'm the only person that's seeing it, so I can't see anybody. All I see is the shared screen. Thanks. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
I just wanted to also add, when you're talking about the town advertising, marketing, does that mean that you're going to add on there the plasma screens? Is that something that we will have access to, that we can post about, that we have a task force, and just a little bit about, I guess with the plasma screen, you're very limited in what you can post on there, but we can post that we have a task force, and that we could put a general email or something like that, that people can contact us for more information or a link or anything like that. Is that possible? I think that would be more to Steve or Wade.
So I believe that is a request that we will have to submit to the town of Shelburne. So if we make our request specific, then we can get feedback from them. So I will rephrase the question for approval.
I have more to add to that.
Apologize. Okay.
Sorry. Also, Wade, you write a quarterly newsletter. Can something be added in there as well? And so if we can also utilize the Facebook page, the town's Facebook page. I know that in the past, events or task force or any committees that have been established, they do go on the town's Facebook page, and then people can see it on there as well. So not only the website, but we have the website, use of the website, the Facebook page, the plasma screens, and quarterly newsletters.
Yeah, we can likely carve out a spot in that newsletter specifically for the task force. So yeah, I think you're right. Just list all 4 of those in the request.
Okay.
Thank you, Elfia. Thank you, Mayor Mills. So do I have someone to move that motion to submit a request to the town of Shelburne to include marketing on the town website, Facebook page, quarterly newsletter, plasma screen, and any additional avenues for marketing that the town can provide?
I'll go ahead.
Okay. Do I have someone to second that?
Yes.
And can you repeat the various platforms again, please?
The mayor's quarterly newsletter, the town website, Facebook page, plasma screens, and any other marketing avenues or vehicles that the town may have that we can leverage. So I believe that was seconded by Kent. Do I have any further discussions or comments?
I had a question on that. Just as you did with the last item about the survey, could we get a peek at that before it goes out?
The marketing material?
Well, you mentioned 2 or 3 different platforms, so this is the first thing we're sending out as a committee.
Absolutely.
I think we should have a look at it before it goes, and I'm a little worried tonight we're rush. That I'm not quite sure why we have to rush this so badly that we couldn't see it and decide on it next week, or at least see it next week before it goes out.
All we're asking for at this point is for approval for the town to be available to put something out. We're not approving any content. We're not providing any content at this point. In order for us to get the town support, we talked last meeting about getting perhaps Carol's help from an administrative perspective. This motion is essentially to ask for that support.
Fine with that. Thank you.
Sorry? You're on mute, Ken.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I thought you were considering content there.
No content yet.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Alethea, but if we are putting anything out as a task force, we all have to agree upon it first?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So much like the survey, the task force will need to approve it. Okay, so again, this motion is simply to request the support from the town to ensure that Carol is available to put something out on the town website and various platforms once we have a vote on it. Okay, so no further discussion items. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, perfect. Looks like we have quorum and it is now 7:03 p.m. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is an update on the funding request. So the last meeting we discussed going to the town of Shelburne to request funding for up to $15,000. At this point, I'm happy to announce that part of that $15,000 has been approved. The final approval will take place on the next council meeting, which is July 13th. So the portion of the funding that has been approved will be to have a diversity and inclusion trainer come in and dedicate an hour and a bit to train the task force on diversity and inclusion. And the idea will be to get us equipped and ready to be able to tackle some of the questions that will come up and be prepared for the delegations, and ultimately to put forward our blueprint. So that is a fantastic update for us and great news. So I have shared with you in the agenda the link to Amanda Fernandez. She's the DNI trainer. Her website is there, as well as you can see a brief bio of her background. Okay, do I have any questions on that statement, comment?
Yes, I think it's because I wasn't here the last meeting, but what is the funding for?
So we had requested funding up to $15,000 to go towards any marketing material conducting the survey. If we needed to send out any advertisements to newspapers, radios, etc., Facebook, marketing material, etc., and of course the training. Okay. And I believe, sorry?
Are you able to make comment in regards to the proposed training?
You can make a comment, but I believe a contract has already been signed with this individual. Would you like to share your comment, Gare?
Yeah, but as you say that, sorry, did I totally missed that. When and how did that happen?
So the training was, I believe, already discussed with Deputy Mayor Anderson. Do you want to comment, or Mayor Mills, on the decision that went into the training?
When the task force was brought forward at council, part of the request was to bring somebody in that would be able to speak to anti-Black racism, racism, of course, in general, and diversity and inclusion. I suggested to council that there was some individuals, or individual in particular, that I was aware that provided that training. Council allowed me the opportunity to provide that information to staff. Staff has in turn been working with that individual, but that individual is designed to, again, come in and provide training on anti-Black racism, racism in general, and diversity and inclusion. Certainly, if there is comments as to an area that you feel that is not included in that could be relayed over to the person who's doing the training. But those are the areas which I believe is broad enough to capture exactly what the essence of the task force is trying to capture. She will be providing. But again, if there's something else that you feel, or somebody else feels that should be added into that they feel is missing in the description that I gave, I could certainly relay that information over to the individual.
In terms of the process, because I'm not familiar with the process, how this works is be the town that would do that, or should it have been a task force that should have looked into possible people that would provide some of that training?
Well, again, this was a suggestion that was made at the council table when the task force was brought together. Council approved that suggestion, and then we went forward with securing somebody that we felt would capture the essence of the training that was required. So again, if at this point, if somebody feels that what I described does not capture what the task force is about, and there's an area that may be missing, then certainly I'm open to hearing that.
No, that's not what I'm wondering about. I'm just wondering about the process. So is it that that was something that was to be brought up at council? This council.
Sorry, it was.
Okay, so I understood that. So yes, it was brought up at council, but my question is sort of was like, how does council determine who is the best or most knowledgeable to proceed or provide this training? Was there like 3 different people discussed or interviewed or talked about as being able to provide this training? Or my other question is, should it have been the task force that should have looked into this? I'm just asking about process.
Good question, Gare. The process was, as I outlined, it was brought to council upon a recommendation, my recommendation. Council agreed with that approach, and that was the approach that we followed. Again, information was, there were a couple of, to answer your question, there were a couple of individuals, I should put out, that were considered in the process. Ultimately, out of the individuals that were considered, the person that was picked, Amanda Fernandez, was deemed to be the best out of what was proposed at the time. And therefore, she's the individual that's coming forward to provide the presentation. So that was the process leading up to it.
Who deliberated the individual, the options?
So this was okay. So the discussion between the individuals and their background and their training was between myself and staff. There was a discussion as to the individuals that were discussed, the expertise that they had. Staff certainly had the opportunity to go and view the expertise of the individuals or what they brought to the table. And again, ultimately, the person that's providing the training now was the person that was selected to do that.
Okay, understood.
I'll just add some additional context to the deputy mayor's initial proposal, both for the creation of this task force and for the utilization of some sort of trainer, was done on the same night. So the training was sort of set in motion prior to this group really formally coming into existence. And that same individual is going to be providing training to council as well. So
that's fantastic. That's good. In terms of equity work, it's important to understand that an hour and a half typically doesn't cover it. And that the task force can I suggest the task force may have to do some of their own work as well too, in terms of understanding the issues.
So let me just add by the timing, there is some initial training that will be provided. There will be some additional work that the Amanda will be providing to the task force. So it's not a one and done. There will be another opportunity or a second opportunity for her to circle back later on in the process to provide additional assistance to the task force.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Any other discussion items on the training before we move on?
Just one question, in looking at her website, is this the same person that's going to help us with the survey and analyze the data, or how's that going to happen?
The idea for the survey and collecting the data would be to have the town of Shelburne, so I believe it's Carol Maitland, to consolidate all of the information and present it back to the task force for us to now make a decision on, or extract that information and put it in some form of a blueprint or recommendation. Much like after the delegations from the community stakeholders such as DCAF, after they do their presentation, then we will decipher that information and then put that forward in a blueprint to the town of Shelburne. Jennifer will also, sorry, I'm mixing up her name. Amanda Fernandez will also be available for us in terms of support as we go through the survey questions and making sure that we're on the right track in gathering the data and putting forward the blueprint. Does that answer your question, Ken? Perfect, thank you. The next item on the list, I think we kind of alluded to it already. We had submitted a request for support from the town of Shelburne in terms of administrative duties. And of course, that means putting together the survey and formally sending it out on the various platforms, as well as marketing information. So we will have official confirmation of this after the next council meeting, which is on the 13th. So tentatively at this point, I believe it will be Carol Maitland, but as I said, we will need to wait until we have official confirmation after council meeting on the 13th before we can decide and move forward. The next item on the list is just to give everyone an update. There will be an opportunity for the task force to present a delegation to the Shelburne Town Council on our progress so far and our roadmap for the future. If anyone else would like to accompany and support me on that request, then by all means, I would welcome the support. But at this point, I will be making a presentation to the Shelburne Town Council and just outline what we've done so far, a summary of both meetings and the roadmap from now until the end date. And if you aren't aware, the end date for this task force is essentially September timeframe. If we skip ahead to the project plan, we have a timeline there that goes until September 9th, which is the date for the blueprints to be shared to Shelburne Town Council. Okay, any comments on the task force presentation to council?
I'll be there with you, Elfia.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
And Elfia,
Sorry.
I like watching those meetings anyway.
Oh, perfect.
So I don't mind being there. It doesn't have to be for the task force because you have Elfia, but I just love to be there.
Yeah, same.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Alethea, would you mind? I'm just taking notes. Present task force progress and roadmap to the town council on what date?
July 13th.
Thank you.
Okay. And the next item on the list is just a review of the project timelines, and I'll try and share my screen again. This was also shared with you in the meeting invitation under review of the task force, project plan, project timeline. So what I've captured here is just a rough outline of all the activities that need to take place between now and the date that we need to present to council. If you have any thoughts, any feedback, or any recommendation, please do share that with me. I'm going to share my screen. So at this point, I'm sharing a rough project outline that starts with, right now I'm showing the second task force meeting and of course the date and what we're doing. We've got draft survey to be reviewed and the task force deadline, which is approval by the 16th. I believe earlier I stated the 13th. The sooner we get the survey approved, the faster we can have it posted on the town website. So again, I will share the draft survey for everyone's feedback. We have a line item here as well to put together some kind of a marketing material, and the tentative date that we have is sometime between July 6th, which is not a lot of runway. So again, information will have to be shared with you between now and you have access to the project outline. You can definitely go in, as I mentioned, and provide your input. The one key item that I'd like to bring to your attention is the fact that Amanda is scheduled to come in on the 9th for our first training. In our previous meetings, we had discussed bi-weekly meetings, but given the amount of work and the short runway, I believe we will need to have weekly meetings instead. So this leads us into a nice segue into the next agenda item, which is to revisit the frequency of the meetings. So at this point,
Sorry, before you do that, there's a proposed September date. What was that September date for the final submissions of the task force?
I
Sorry about
believe
that.
that's okay. I believe the September council meeting is September 7th. So if I'll just quickly outline for you. So we have training on July 9th, marketing to the public on the 16th, task force delegation. The first delegation will be from DCAF and members of the community. And these are all rough outlines. So again, I am open to the task force feedback and comment. The 17th.
September the 7th, Labor Day. So I doubt if the council will be meeting that day.
Good point. Perhaps I'll check the council schedule.
I think it's the 14th, if
14th?
I'm not mistaken.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Althea. So I'll adjust the end date accordingly and recirculate the project plan. So continuing down the list, we have the 4th task force meeting on the 23rd with delegations from the community partners, the 5th task force meeting on the 30th, and on the 31st to August 6th is the time given for the town, assuming it's going to be Carol, to be able to review and consolidate all of the survey data in order to present it to us on the August 13th. We also have another training session that is scheduled on August 6th for the task force. And August 20th and the 27th are days allotted for us to start putting together the blueprint for the town of Shelburne. The finalize the blueprint is essentially on the 27th with presentation to council on the 14th. So again, this was just very high level, just something for us to start working towards. By no means is it final. It was designed as a roadmap to kind of guide us along and to ensure that we're not losing momentum or falling behind on any of the key tasks. So again, I do welcome the task force feedback and any comments that you may have.
So Alethea, oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So just so I can put this in my calendar, Thursday, August 6th is the training by Amanda.
D&I training number 2 is August 6th, yes.
And I would put in 6 p.m.
Correct.
Bella, there's also the training. I don't know if you picked that up. The first training is July 9th.
Thursday, July 9th.
Yeah.
That's next week.
Yeah.
Correct.
Alethea, are you able to send this out?
Yeah, I was
Yes.
just about to say.
So I apologize. I did send it out in the original attachment last week, and I realized that it may not have been, you may not have been able to access the document. So I will recirculate it tonight so that everyone has it fresh in your calendar.
Yeah, and will the time be on there as well?
The time will be 6 p.m. And
For all of them?
all of our meetings going forward will be at 6 p.m. So we conducted a survey to determine the best time, and 62.5% of the votes came in with 6 to 8 p.m. time slot.
Okay.
Okay.
Alethea, do you want me to send out a calendar invite to everyone, or just leave it?
I'm going to try and see if I can, let's connect offline. I'm going to see if there's a way that with Zoom, it can be embedded in everyone's contact calendar.
It can, but I think it may need to come from a personal rather than with the Zoom link. Like how we usually do it via email, you can actually put that into your calendar and send it out to us.
Perfect. Okay, so I think we've kind of talked about this already. So the last meeting we talked about bi-weekly meetings, given the mandate and what we have to accomplish between now and September. I am moving to have all of our meetings between now and September scheduled weekly. So I guess I'll need someone to move that and someone to second. Do I have someone to approve weekly meetings out there? Someone to second?
I can happily second if no one else does.
Thank you, Bella. Any comments, discussions? Hearing none, all in favor? A thumbs up or a wave, perfect. So I have Ken, you're in favor, Bella is in favor. Soha?
Yes.
Cheyenne?
Yeah.
Gear? Kent?
Thumbs up.
Yes.
Excellent. So Gear, thumbs up. Kent is a yes. I think Simran.
She has actually left for another meeting.
Okay, perfect. No worries. Thank you. So all in favor, and approval time is 7:24 p.m. Sorry, Althea, you had your hand up?
Oh, no, I was responding to all in favor.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so this brings us to the close of our meeting. Do we have any roundtable questions, comments that anyone would like to raise?
Can I just go back for a second? What was the answer to Ken's question about the super burger thing? Like if that's included in Shelburne.
So the task force mandate is specific to Shelburne. The community stakeholders such as Dufferin Circle and DCAF that are coming in will be speaking on behalf of individuals from the Shelburne community. So though they operate from a county perspective, they're coming in to provide specific feedback and recommendations that would impact the Shelburne community.
If I may just add to that, Cheyenne, if and this was, I don't want to speak for Ken. I don't know the extent of the conversation that he had with this individual, where where this person lived, whether this was only an incident at Superburger versus an experience also in Shelburne. I'd like to believe if there was that opportunity, the person identified, listen, I'm a resident of Shelburne, and not only has something happened to me at Superburger, but I've also experienced X, Y, and Z in the town of Shelburne. Certainly an individual like that would be relevant to the task force, and we would welcome an individual like that to come and speak to the task force.
And to further point out, that is part of, I've added that as part of the survey. So if, let's say someone didn't want to say it, come on and say it, the surveys are anonymous. So they can put that information in there too.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's most important that we listen. And I mean, we'll have to do some sorting and shuffling towards the end of this, but I think it's important that we listen to the general area and then try and define what this means for Shelburne. I did have one, I guess it's a question about the groups that are coming to present to us by delegation. Are we tapping people on the shoulder, or are we leaving that open for them to respond? How are we approaching that?
So what I have done, and in hindsight, I probably should have copied the task force on this. What I have done is I've drafted an email and sent it to all of the key stakeholders. So DCAF, Family Transition Place, Muslims of Dufferin, leaders of, for example, the Sikh community, Dufferin Circle, the LGBTQ plus community. There's a key contact there that I've reached out to. So I've basically put the question and some key individuals in the community that could represent, for example, the Black community or, the Sikh community, as I mentioned. So I've put the questions out there. Some have come back and said, yes, they would like to participate. And so the first individuals that said yes was DCAP, and I have allotted them in the time slot for the 16th. We also have Dufferin Circle who also said yes. So they're scheduled for the 23rd. And as we get more responses in, then I will continue to schedule them in and then update or project plan accordingly and include that in the meeting minutes going forward. Do you have any?
I'd appreciate seeing the list and seeing who has agreed to come and not come, if you don't mind.
Perfect. So I will share that with the entire group.
If I just may add to that, Alethea, and for Ken's benefit, with respect to a number of these stakeholders have actually reached out directly to me, and I've actually forwarded them over to the chair, Alethea. So once they realized that the task force was formed, many DCAF and others, there's even a body from Headwaters actually that contacted me and said that they're interested somehow in wanting to participate. But to your point, that needs to be sort of siphoned through to see what exactly they want to sort of bring to the table. But a number of stakeholders have reached out to us directly saying that they wanted to participate.
And I believe one of those stakeholders was HCIA. And I believe you are familiar with that group as well, Ken.
I'm not familiar with them. What is that group?
Headwaters Communities in Action. and I can't give you, so their mandate is essentially around wellness and promoting diversity and inclusion for the Shelburne, well, Dufferin County, Headwaters community, I should say. I can't speak more to that organization. Obviously, I'm not involved, just brief background. The objective, of course, for all of these delegations is for us to get some pre-reading information so that we have an idea of what they're going to be talking about at their meetings. So stay tuned for that information. We will definitely be sharing that, well, with the task force ahead of time so that we are prepared.
Headwaters Community in Action would best conceive of them as an enabling organization. So they would look for opportunities to help organizations in the community meet that organization's objectives. One of the most recent things they've done is to help establish the Dufferin Foundation, which is a funding organization for the community. It's not part of HCI anymore, but they were one of the founding groups to help that get rolling. So they're an enabling organization, if you will.
Thank you.
Elfia, if I may, just a quick second, I just want to put out for the task force, as Ken raised a question about community stakeholders. It's certainly open, and this should go without saying, but it's open to the task force. These are individuals, many of which have reached out directly to say that they want to participate. Certainly between now and when they start coming in, if any member of the task force feels that there should be other community stakeholders that should be contacted that would be relevant to the objective of the task force, then that I would encourage all of you to put that information onto the table for discussion and consideration. And if the group feels that there should be additional community stakeholders, then they will be contacted if that's the will of the task force.
I guess I do have one question, Deputy Mayor Anderson or Mayor Mills. In the event that we need more time, I recognize that this is a significant undertaking. I know that we are all quite capable, but just to make sure that we do the due diligence required, would we have an opportunity to extend the due date for this blueprint to be submitted and delivered to Town Council? Or is that something that we need to discuss at a later date?
No, I think there is some flexibility to that deadline. And the rationale for the deadline in the first place was to make sure that whatever recommendations that this task force brings forward are brought forward in time so that council consider them prior to settling on our 2021 budget. The only suggestion I would make is that if more time, excuse me, is going to be required, to sort of at least provide some updates as to where things are at by September, so that Treasury office, for example, can factor in some of the potential budget implications for next year when they're developing their drafts. We typically don't approve the final budget until December, but budget discussions and deliberations start August, September. So if we can't do it, we can't do it. But as I say, I think at the very least we should provide some updates to the treasurer.
Perfect.
Extension we may want to make in time is on those evenings when we're receiving delegations. I don't think we're going to get away with an hour meeting on those nights. So
yes, I agree. Okay. The last item that we have on the agenda is just a review of the previous meeting minutes. So if you aren't aware, the video as well as the minutes are posted on the town website. Of course, the video you can find on the Shelburne YouTube page. So feel free to go and preview or review the meetings. And of course, once the minutes are posted, you can definitely have a look at the minutes there as well. And a summary will also be shared to you electronically. And without any other questions, I think we can officially close the meeting at 7:33 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening, and see you all next Thursday at 6 p.m.
Great.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.